Meanwhile, thousands of protesters rallied at the Hong Kong International Airport in a bid to draw attention back to their set of demands ahead of a weekend of protests in the city, the 10th consecutive weekend. Pro-democracy activists kicked off 3 days of rallies at Hong Kong's International Airport, hoping to win international support from arriving passengers. Demonstrators in black T-shirts and face masks gathered in the airport's arrival hall, carrying pamphlets about their demands. The rallies were promoted on social media with a mock boarding pass reading HK to freedom, as in Hong Kong to freedom, and warm pickup to guests to HK. This will be the second time protesters have brought their message to the international travel hub. The massive travel hub connects the city to more than 220 global destinations, serving at least 74.7 million passengers. Meanwhile, the government in Hong Kong is in no mood to relent.
As far as political solution is concerned, I don't think we should just sort of make concessions in order to silence the violent protesters. We should do what is right for Hong Kong. And at this moment, what is right for Hong Kong, as we have heard all our 33 business representatives told us, is to stop the violence and to say no to the chaotic situation that Hong Kong has experienced in the last few weeks, so that we can move on. And when we move on, we will hope that we could tackle the more fundamental and deep-seated problems that may have surfaced as a result of this particular situation.
The protests were meant to bring the focus back to the main demands of the protesters, which were originally released in July, a day after a small group of protesters stormed the Hong Kong legislature. The demands include a full withdrawal of a proposed bill that would allow Hong Kong people to be extradited to mainland China, a retraction of charges against anti-extradition protesters, a retraction of any characterization of the movement as a riot, an independent committee to investigate the Hong Kong police's use of force, universal suffrage in elections for the city's chief executive officer and legislature by the year 2020. The gatherings at the airport have not been authorized, but the last demonstration at the airport took place peacefully without causing flight disruptions. The sit-in comes ahead of the 10th consecutive weekend of protests in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is now reeling from its worst political crisis since Britain handed over the former colony back to China in 1997. And earlier we spoke to our correspondent Patrick Falk, who is in Beijing, and he gets us this report. Take a look.
Yeah, well, that's right. There's a series of protests planned for the entire weekend once again. And as far as we understand, these protests, the sit-in even that's taking place at the airport, is meant to be happening for the next 3 days. Just looking at the pictures, it does seem as though the numbers that have gathered at Hong Kong International seem to be much bigger than a couple of weeks ago when we had a sort of similar protest that took place there. Security was meant to have been beefed up, but I'm hearing that instead of manning all the doors, the security who were supposed to be stopping anybody without a ticket within the next 24 hours to travel from coming in, and also unless they were staff operating at the airport. I'm hearing, though, that they only were stopping people coming in through the departure hall, which is a little bit of a strange thing to do, given that anybody who's been to that airport knows that, you know, people can come right off the train and walk right in. And of course, they don't appear to have been stopping people in the arrival hall that connects to the departure hall as well. But, you know, it does seem as though things are peaceful there for the time being, as they were a couple of weeks ago, and things are just carrying on as usual. Well, I think so, you know, and I think, you know, when you talk about the core demands, we're talking about some of the things that perhaps the protesters feel are most reasonable to ask for. And of course, over the past several weeks, it's morphed into all sorts of different things, including democratic reform, and also for the chief executive to step down, and some people, obviously the most radical of the protesters out there, calling for independence as well. But I think the core protest movement realizes that that's perhaps a bridge too far. Much been brought back towards withdrawing the bill, calling for an independent investigation and for democratic reform. Those are three of the sort of core demands that they're making, and feel that that's a reasonable thing to be asking for.